Welcome back to the Fifth Pinnacle by H.G. Schuler. Chapter 13. The 1800s. The door is propped open with a cool breeze coming through. It brushes briskly against James' dark brown three-piece suit. Without the feeling of privacy, he takes it upon himself to step just inside the room. There is no one present, but he can hear a faint rustling sound behind a dressing partition. Beyond that, he can see the window fully open and the curtains blowing continuously like the ripple of waves from a beach. He reckons she must be behind the partition, but at first he hesitates to speak. Then it hits him that she might walk out, undressed and unsuspecting, out from behind the partition. He clears his throat loudly. Is someone there? Miss Gall? Do you have a certificate of birth or any other papers that identify your age? Is it you, James? Of course. Who else? Don't come in any farther. I'm changing. I wouldn't dare. But did you know you've left the door open? I see your point, but it is July, and I do love the breeze. My privacy seems secure. Other than my chambermaid, there's not a soul in the house. What I mean is, well, without the understanding that you were paying a visit. Now that it's come to my attention, maybe I should close the door whilst dressing from now on. Yes, I would hate to hinder you in this way again. It's been near a year. When are you going to start calling me Angela? My apologies. I must start remembering to do so. What was it you needed? I only just thought of it a little while ago. Your regeneration was completed months prior. You're a young woman again. Obviously, you can't be walking around with the same credentials as before. Your certificate of birth or any other papers identifying your age must be modified. Grace and I made the decision long ago to counterfeit ours every 10 years. Do you mind if I wait until tomorrow to dig them out? I mean, it shouldn't be too difficult to find. I don't mind at all. Tomorrow's fine. It's just that I've been readying myself for the gathering this evening. I wanted to look my best. It's not often all regenerated ones come together at the same location. Not all, Angela. Only those we've regenerated here in the Tallahassee area. We're not sure of the numbers worldwide. Maybe someday we will. In fact, I'm certain of it. She walks out from the protection of the partition, smiles, and gives a curtsy. In a sudden gasp, James' breath is almost taken by her beauty. She is draped in a red dress that flows to her ankles and is outlined in fancy white lace. A white hat, completely round, bowing slightly at its edges, is tied with red ribbon and crowning her head. She holds a lightweight parasol umbrella with mixed colors of lace covering its fringes. She tilts the point of the parasol downward, pointing its wooden tip at James. How do I look? And be honest. Unlike any scientist I've ever seen, you look like a painting out of one of those French Street scenes. Really, you're absolutely stunning. What time can we expect you? Not more than an hour. I'm too excited to wait any longer. There will be about 120 guests total, the majority of whom you've never had the opportunity to meet. About half of them no longer live in the Tallahassee area. You needn't be in a rush to meet them. The gathering lasts for 3 weeks, so relax and give yourself time. The only thing that's going to relax me is a vodka tonic. There will be plenty of that, too. Later, while Angela was outside making the rounds meeting some of the guests, she hears a peculiar sound. When she walks to the edge of the yard, she sees an unusual animal meandering slowly with its nose down as if inspecting the grounds. She waves for James to come over. He walks over with a man named Johnny. He was regenerated several years ago. She points out the strange creature. What is it, James? We have an occasional problem with wild pigs. Do you mean boar? Yes. Would you like me to shoot it? Johnny asked with a tinge of duty mixed with excitement in his voice. You wouldn't mind? Not at all. We could roast it at the bonfire later tonight. That's a splendid idea. Would you mind shooing it into the pine forest before shooting it to all the guests? I'll get some help and do it right now. He dips his head, then runs off in a rush. Angela, Johnny just came from Atlanta. I think you might be interested in the report he gave me a few minutes ago. Do you mean with the war? I do indeed. Then please, tell me what's happening. As you have heard already, General Sherman has Tennessee under the control of the Union Army. Some weeks ago, he marched his troops south into Georgia. He crept slowly through the mountains, being hindered only a little by snipers along the way. North of Atlanta, he began destroying every building he deemed capable of supporting the Confederates. Everything from uniform processing operations to munition depots, including farms capable of providing food. He's gone out of his way to knock down and burn even the smallest of towns along his march. A few days ago, he leveled the great city of Atlanta and set it ablaze. Johnny reports that General Sherman is now marching toward Savannah and the Atlantic Ocean. He reports that the Confederates are in short supply of money and the war may very well be over shortly. I see. That's incredible news. You only came here because of the war. You made no bones about it. I suspect you're already thinking of moving back when it's finally and mercifully ceased. Am I correct in my thinking? I will admit that Tallahassee is raw, and compared to what I'm accustomed to, it's quite vulgar. But I'm young and strong again and can endure so much more. Really, truth be told, you and Grace have made life for me more than compatible. My housing is nice, and so too are the acres and acres of well-kept grounds. You have a lot to be proud of here. You're helping to civilize the area. I've gotten used to the weather. The winters here are so temperate, although I do miss a little snowfall now and again. Pennsylvania, the summers there are just as amazing as the winters here. To have both in my life would be heaven-like. Yes, I would very much like to go back to Pennsylvania, and I would also like to visit my dear homeland, Germany. But neither of those things are possible. While she spoke, she looked over a field of green grass and watched 3 vigorous men chase and shoo a 100-pound pig out towards the forest. She laughs at the sight of it. When her laughing subsides, she turns facing James. I'm so grateful for what you've done for me. Have I told you that? About a dozen times if my count is right. Just the same, it can't be said often enough. Truly, I mean that. You are the finest of women, Angela. I'm very lucky to have you as my teacher. It's my desire that you stay and continue my education of the brain. Since your regeneration, you can see more clearly why it's so important to me. I envision everyone on the earth being young again. With your help, I may one day understand how the formula works on the brain. I think it's possible to unearth the mechanism to endless life without having to be regenerated. It's all there in the extraordinary brain, and eventually, working together, we shall find it. That being said, I don't want you to think you owe me anything. You're most certainly free to go at any time. It's why I brought it up. You've already taught me so much and lived up to your end of the bargain. What are you trying to tell me, James? I do have a devil of a time getting to the point sometimes. He looks her straight on. His face resembles a child about to confess to his parents. If it's your desire to leave, then as much as it pains me, you must leave and be happy. Otherwise, being young again won't mean a thing. I'm not at all surprised by your entreaty. Your kindness grabbed my attention from the first occasion we met in the Casa Hotel. Your seeming selflessness has subsequently proved itself sincere. Grace is the same, and she's already like a best friend to me. If I leave here, I could never make myself known to any of my old friends or relatives. What would I tell them? How could I explain? So, there's nothing to be done. Pennsylvania and Germany are out of the question. I shall have to be content with writing letters. Your cause is now my cause. I want the same things you do. I'm staying here in Tallahassee. I don't care if it takes 100 years or 2. It doesn't matter because we have all the time in the world now. At some point, we're going to break the code to the formula. We'll release that mechanism and bring everyone endless life. I want to be part of that, really, truly. I believe in the cause, James. From now on, you and I are connected partners. That is if you're agreeable to it. Regardless, I won't be separated from you and Grace. You're my family now. If this is how you feel, then I agree immediately. Still, you're free to change your mind at any time. I won't be changing my mind. All the same, you're your own decision maker. Do you mind if I leave you unattended now? I'm so excited by your decision. I want to run off and tell my dear Grace. Feel free to scurry. I've got 3 men and a pig to keep me entertained. Late that night, Angela watched from a considerable distance as a huge bonfire blazed unabated. Its flames reach so high that it appears to be scorching the moon. From where she stands, under a stately pecan tree, a blue coolness in the air is whisking between its limbs, firmly blowing against her legs and causing ripples in her dress. She can hear the occasional outburst of laughter around the fire and the sound of speeches, toasts, and what seems a constant stream of jokes. She feels wonderful and happy as she sips heavily from a bottle of white wine. It was at this moment that she became aware of another voice, this one familiar to her. It was Grace, and she was giving Angela congratulations and good wishes. "James has not been able to stop talking about you. You have made his day and mine, too. We are overjoyed that you will be staying indefinitely." The two friends stood speechless, hugging and crying. Suddenly, they were reminded of the great number of guests standing around the fire as a loud outburst of laughter erupted, filling the glowing night with a lively happiness. There were gasps of delight and astonishment as one of the guests, drunk out of his mind, ripped his clothes off and went running completely naked around the fire. "That's different," Angela said, half laughing. It wasn't a dark night due to the huge bonfire and a full moon. As the night deepened, each individual star looked like a light being lit in a distant window. The back of the house was visible, as was the lawn and a patch of lemon trees. Men and women's faces shone with a reddish glow, their bodies intermingled and set off by the bright fire. "Are you lonely, Angela, without a man, I mean?" "No, Grace, I am not. There is plenty to think about with the work James and I are doing. He has an extraordinary capacity to store up the knowledge he picks up in my training, so he keeps me on my toes. I no longer seem as well informed to him, I'm sure. Yes, he soaks information up quickly. I think because he's done so much reading in the past. It sharpens the mind, but he has high regard for your expertise. So, you don't feel the need to marry?" "No. Should I? It's just that you're a young woman again. There's a large contingent of regenerated men here. There's no worry about having something in common. I'm sure whomever you chose, you would get along quite nicely with. That is if it were your desire. The ordinary feelings a woman has for a man. They are nothing new to me." She bit her lip in silence, hesitating. "I still have half-forgotten passions from my former life. I should like those to die away completely before I re-engage my heart in that way. For the time being, I'm married to mathematics and science. I used to have the reputation as a knower and explainer of the brain. But the brain is so undeniably complicated that no scientist or doctor of medicine should be given these labels. I find out new things practically every day. Sometimes it causes me insomnia. What I'm trying to tell you, Grace, is that you don't have to be fussing over me. I'm busy with my work and perfectly happy without a marriage union. If you're sure then, I won't fret over it any longer. I'm sure. Some of the men who have already noticed you will be disappointed. I'm not the only regenerated woman here. There must be 50 or 60 others. Yes, dear, but none more beautiful than you. You flatter me, Grace. Try to keep in mind that some of the men here badly miss the wives of their past life. They will no doubt seek your attention. I hadn't thought of that. I don't want any misunderstanding, but I'll try not to completely ignore them. As long as you grasp the situation, do as you please. They are much older than they look, and in no way need to be coddled like they are babies. I've made some mistakes in my past relationships. I once gave my heart to a man who didn't deserve it. I'm embarrassed to say that he never really gave it back. If I do ever desire that kind of friendship again, I hope to eliminate them. The mistakes, I mean. We all learn from our mistakes. Your acknowledgement in these matters of the heart shows that you have, but don't expect too much of yourself. No matter how intelligent you might look, or how old you eventually get, mistakes will still happen. There is a part of life as the sugarcane fields or the hot Florida sunshine. Angela nods in agreement, and the two friends turned their attention back to the bonfire, which had since died back a little. There was quiet. A calmness had settled into the evening. Fireflies floated in the night air, drifting across the grounds and along the edge of the forest. Somewhere far away, a dog barked. It seemed a sad, mellow announcement that the night's festivities were coming to their end. James walks out of the shadows and tips his hat in the soft glow of the moon. "Are you two ladies as ready for sleep as I am?" Grace takes him by the hand and kisses it. "I can't speak for Angela, but I've been ready for the better part of an hour. I think we should go inside and allow the stars and the night some time alone. First, I have something I would like to tell both of you." He stood looking at them, but his voice had changed. It was quieter, more serious, his face sullener. Then he was so quiet, it was as if he had changed his mind or wasn't sure what to say. Angela, detecting the change, quickly takes a step closer to him. "Are you going to leave us hanging? What are you going to tell us?" Grace has told you the stories of old Jack and how he came to be here in Tallahassee. She has indeed. He's a terrible man, the worst. He's come to Tallahassee. He's out there somewhere, looking for us. "How do you know that?" Grace shouted. "You can't know that." He didn't answer for some time. "You heard your wife, James." And then in a softer, more subdued voice, Angela spoke again. "I'll repeat her words. How do you know that?" "I don't know." Again, he goes silent. Angela looks at Grace, her eyes widening. She looks back at James. "You're not making any sense. I can feel it. And for me, it's the same as knowing it. If I'm not damned, then I don't know the meaning of it. It's been almost 40 years, but he's found us. I've had Johnny prepare 10 men with muskets, just in case." In the distance, at the edge of the pine forest, the faint glow of a light could be seen bobbing up and down, moving in their direction. "Is that one of the guests?" Grace asked. The light stopped temporarily, then proceeded. It did this same sequence, stopping and starting several times until it had come within 50 yards of the bonfire. Voices coming from the light could now be heard arguing. Then suddenly a commanding voice with the distinctness of old Jack rang out. "You betrayed me. I never was the let's get along forgiving type, although my mother, the old bag, would have loved that." About 50 guests standing around the fire walked to its north end, turn around puzzled by the single glowing light and the sound of voices. The others were either too drunk to stand or had fallen asleep and didn't know what was going on. There were other, much fainter voices coming from the light, and it sounded like they were arguing again. And then they fell silent. A stillness takes over the atmosphere. With no breeze blowing, the thick air of humidity is causing a stickiness to cling to the faces of all the guests. They are all quiet as they stare into the darkness at the single glowing light. The whole situation was playing out like someone had invented it to entertain the guests. That was in fact what some of them were thinking. What happens next happens very quickly and in succession. Suddenly the light goes out and the sound of fireworks cracks through the heavy, dark air. For a split instant, it appears that entertainment is indeed in play. However, the thought is wiped away with a horrific scene of agony. A volley of 50 shots, discharged from 6 Henry repeating rifles, was the actual sound at first thought to have been fireworks. At the inaudible command of old Jack, the riflemen had mowed down about 20 men and women, killing most of them outright. As the rest scatter, several more picked off. All those asleep or drunk jump up and begin to run along with those being shot at. Several women fall and are trampled. There are inhuman shrieks coming from the wounded, some of which are laying on the ground holding their injuries, some stumbling or trying to run. Everyone has lost his self-control. The indescribable scene continues playing out as all the guests able to do so run for the house or the barn. There are 16 dead and another 18 too injured or run. The light from the bonfire hovers around them as old Jack and 6 other men walk up. The men and women laying injured on the ground swear loudly, begging the executioners for mercy. One is shot through the head, falling over dead. "Please, you don't have to do this." One of the injured men shouts, "I want to live a little longer. I want to date a girl again, to get married," and he is shot through the heart, his body instantly going into convulsions as he dies. Another round of rifle fire rings through the night. This time, 3 of old Jack's men fall, shot with muskets through the chest. Old Jack raises his own rifle, but before he can find someone to aim it at, it is shot out of his hands. "Drop your guns." A voice shouts. It's Johnny, and he has 9 other musket-toting men with him. As they walk into the light of the fire, James is walking with them. "I'm not the murderer. You are, Jack, but you're going to have to pay for what you've done here today. You have massacred innocent men and women, and all regenerated ones like yourself. It's of your own making, James. You knew old Jack would find you someday. I have to say, though, I needed a little help and got it from an extraordinary source." "Okay, Jack, go on, I'm listening." "His name is Lett, Solomon Ray Lett. He's the man that invented the formula. I work for him now. I'm his new head of security. By the way, just for your information, he found me. I didn't find him. How did he know where to find me? You're going to be surprised by his powers, James. He's known about you and your whereabouts since you picked up on the trail of evidence that he left to find the formula. I give you credit. Didn't think you had it in you to double-cross me. A few years after you ran to this less-than-civilized place, he came to me. I've been with him ever since. You've killed people regenerated by his own formula. Why? It was important he get your attention. Are you telling me he ordered this? You're starting to catch on. I already told you, I work for Mr. Lett now. The few we've killed here today can be replaced 100 times over, the next year if we like. You're not alone in the regenerating of people. You need to take ownership of that. Mr. Lett is your boss now. Do you understand? Do you accept that? Why now? Why not years ago? He's been watching you, keeping up with how successful you've been. Now he's decided to bring you into the worldwide program. This country is growing by leaps and bounds every day. He wants you to lead a panel of 12 men and women. The panel, with you at its head, will oversee the United States and all of North and South America, which includes the islands in the Caribbean. So, I'm just supposed to believe a murderer like you? No. Since I've gotten your complete attention, and I think I did a great job of that, didn't I, James? In 3 days, you'll meet Mr. Lett in person. That should give you plenty of time to clean up the mess here. He'll give you further instructions leading to the development of the panel. The scope of your regeneration project just grew considerably. What building do I meet him in, and what time? There's a large room upstairs from Delmonico's Steakhouse. 7 o'clock. After dinner. No double-crossing this time. If you run, he'll know where you are right off. I won't run, Jack. I want to hear what he has to say. This sounds like an incredible opportunity. Then I will be leaving, and I'm taking what men I have left. Don't move an inch, Jack, and keep your hands up where I can see them. Johnny, have your men keep their muskets aimed. Mr. Lett wouldn't like you picking off his head of security. I'm sure he knows the pathetic person you really are. You and your men can be replaced 1,000-fold this next year if he wants it. I can't let you massacre these innocent people and just walk away from it. Johnny, when you're ready. Yes, sir, Mr. Jenkins. On the count of 3, men. I'll take old Jack, and you men take the others. 1, 2, 3. Johnny was an excellent marksman, but his hand shook with excitement and nervousness, and he only grazed old Jack's side. While the other 3 men fell dead, old Jack ran and disappeared into the darkness. Johnny throws down his one-shot musket, runs and slides boots first at the feet of the 3 men they had just shot. He grabs up one of the Henry rifles and starts shooting and screaming wildly into the darkness. Afterwards, James, Grace, and Angela walk into the field where Johnny is still agonizing over his missed opportunity. The grass is glowing eerily from the moonlight. So too are the faces of old Jack's men as they lie dead. Angela notices an object lying next to her shoe. When she bends down to pick it up, she hears Grace's voice from behind her. How weird the light is tonight. The fields look covered in snow. When she lifts the object, it's a large, red-handled knife, its blade covered in blood. James, what do you make of this? He takes the knife from Angela. Looks like old Jack's Bowie knife. He's been hit. One of the musket balls took it right off him. And look there, I see its pouch, too. Angela touches the blood with her finger, then rubs it in her hand. Is it possible I could have known about this? That doesn't make sense, Angela. Couldn't someone have tried to warn me, but I just wasn't listening. No, child. Grace leans into her, hugging her. James, the sight of this is too much for her. The moonshine was coming in through her window, leaving a sort of white gloss halfway across the room and a dark silhouette across the other half. She stood in the doorway, propping herself up against the casing. Her arms are crossed, her mind in deep thought, her breathing slow and labored. A voice near the tone of whispering sounds behind her. Will you be needing anything, Miss Angela? She turns her head, and her face has the look of someone who does not expect to sleep tonight. For heaven's sake, at this hour? No. Julie, you're free to go to bed. Thank you, dear. I know you mean well. With the constellations still burning so bright and beautiful, it's hard to comprehend what just happened only a short while ago. Go to your room and pray. We need all the prayers we can get tonight. Yes, ma'am. I've refilled your water bowl, and we'll check on you first thing in the morning. Very good. You're excused now. Angela leans forward, walking farther into the room. She tosses her hat atop the bed, rests one hand on its post while slipping off her shoes. Then as she walks around to sit on the bed, she soberly notices an elongated box with a note beside it sitting on the nightstand. As she picks up the note and starts reading, it is apparent it was left well before the hellish bloodshed had broken out. It was in the handwriting of Grace, but was from her and James. The note makes it clear that the gift in the box was James' idea. When she opens the box, a sparkling necklace filled with diamonds is shining at her. The note said it was in gratitude for her generous decision to stay on and continue working with James. The note finishes by saying, "You're a dream come true." She lays backward across the bed, biting her knuckles and wondering about this Mr. Lett, how he could possibly justify killing innocent people. She didn't remember when she fell asleep, but she was awakened early the next morning by loud voices and the sound of a wagon and horses. She felt well rested, as if she had slept several hours, unbroken. She looks out the window and sees dawn breaking. Next to the wagon was James and Johnny, talking heavily. She rushes out into the gray and red dawn, only to see the wagon pulling off and James standing in shoes wet from a heavy dew. "Hold on there, Angela. Why are you running?" "I don't really know. I thought you," and she stops a moment to catch her breath. "You and Johnny were talking about something important, weren't you?" "I should say so. He and some of the other men are gathering up the bodies to bury. We've decided to cut the gathering short. It's been ruined, and there's nothing to be done about that. 3 more days will give everyone some time to discuss what has happened and when to have the next gathering. After that, they can all go home and hopefully come to terms with it. I want you to understand something. Angela, I don't trust this man, Let. Not even if he did invent the formula. No matter what oversight he gives me, I will still be focused on our work. However, he and his people are the powers to be, and we will have to find a way to exist with that. Yes, James, it's reasonable. I understand." She looks out to the distant field where the dew was glistening from the early sun. James follows her lead, pointing his head in the same direction, and they both catch sight of the wagon and the bodies being loaded.
You have reached the end of Chapter 13 of the 5th Pinnacle, Book 1 of Earth Chronicles by H.G. Schuler. Stay tuned for the rest of the story, chapter by chapter on audiobooks at YouTube.